Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. What you're looking at here is the carburetor to my Recon all-terrain vehicle. And all these extra hoses, all these extra orange hoses, this is a vacuum actuated accelerator pump. Let's not call it a fuel pump, let's call it what it really is, and it's an accelerator pump. And it's used as you give this thing additional throttle, it richens the mixture up, so it gives you a little extra pull to get off the line. Removing a carburetor from a quad, easy enough. You got these two 10mm bolts. You got to take off the fuel line, you got to take off the air filter assembly. Sometimes there's an extra hose. This one doesn't seem to have anything other than the fuel line. This thing has a cable choke, and the cable for the choke goes through here, so you have to loosen this up, take the cable off, and then get the eye out, move the cable around to get the eye out. So all of that, not all that difficult. So let's take a look at this fuel. Let's start out with the top of the carburetor. I'm going to do things kind of one piece at a time. Like, I don't want to forget where these hoses are going. I mean, I could always go back and look at the videotape, obviously, to figure out where they need to be. And from their lengths, it more or less gets me back to where they need to be. So, but just quickly for the fuel pump, or the accelerator pump, let's call it the right thing, right? A couple of bolts come out, get the hose out of the way. This carburetor was not that bad. By the way, this is obviously spring loaded, so pay attention to that. You really, not a good idea to launch the spring into orbit. So the way this works is vacuum is applied to the top, which moves the diaphragm back and forth. There's a little valve in here that it actuates kind of as a one-way valve, and it pulls fuel. I think the fuel comes from down here and up, and then to richen things up, it pumps the fuel into this one and down into the carburetor, into the velocity part, the airflow part of the carburetor. So it's off, and there are a couple of things to look at. Let me make sure I'm showing it to you. See the way this is kind of clogged up here? Well, that makes it harder to get any air through. I mean, easy enough to fix. By the way, wear protective wear, gloves, all that kind of stuff. Right, because you want to make sure that you have good airflow through here. So that looks pretty good. Generally speaking, be really careful with these diaphragms. You do not want to punch any holes in it or anything like that. So put that off to the side and, you know, try to be careful with it. So I don't know, could you see if I didn't have my hand in the way? Oops. I think you guys could see that little hole there kind of near my finger. That's the vacuum port for this whole thing. So just make sure it's nice and clear as it is. These hoses are, you know, a little nasty. I don't have anything to replace them with, so I'm just gonna kind of blast through. Right. This is a one-way valve. Oops. Down. That's a one-way valve that I mentioned. Oops. So once again, just to make sure everything's clear. So I'm trying not to tear this whole thing apart and kind of lose my where the hose is going also. That's as far as I'm going to go with the fuel pump. This appeared to be a working carburetor, so I'm not going to go too crazy with fixing it, or one could say breaking it. Nope. No, I have that aimed in the wrong direction. It's also handy doing this on videotape, because if I run into trouble, I can always go back and look at the video to see where I kind of went wrong. So with that, the accelerator pump is basically done. Right now, to get into the body of the carburetor, down here, once again, there's a little, see, it's a little crusty, so and you can see gas blowing out of the carburetor here. So we know that's clear, and this one is really clamped on, so that's going to be a little harder to mess with. I'm going to see if I can't find another way to get to that one. The bottom of the carb, not a lot of hard to do. Take 3 screws off, take it out. This is actually clean. It's really kind of nice and clean. I normally give it a quick. Doesn't need to be scraped. Right. So that's in nice shape. Take note of where this is, where it's placed. That way, right, when it's time to put it back together again, it's not hard. I'm going to take the float out. Just take this pin. Make sure I'm showing it to you. Take the pin out. Take the carb out. Be careful not to lose the needle valve on there. I pre-loosened these guys, so I mean, you could put a wrench on it or screwdriver, but I pre-loosened that. So take those 2 out. Before you take the idle fuel richener and leaner valve out, the idle fuel adjuster valve, before you take that out, what you should do is you should hand tighten it. Take note where it is. So that's 1/2 turn, 2 half turn, 3 half turn, 4 half turn, and it more or less bottomed out at 4 half turns. So I know when I put it in, I should tighten it so that it just barely bottoms out. Then I should spin it out 4 half turns, and that'll adjust the carburetor like it was before this whole thing started. When you do take out this idle adjuster needle valve, be careful, because you see the spring on there. You don't want to lose that spring. Well, there we go. We have it all taken apart. Now, I'm not positive about this guy. Once again, these hoses like to fall off. I mentioned that I wanted to check it. So I'm just going to make sure it's clear. And obviously stuff, wait a minute, let me show it to you. Right, stuff squirts out of the carburetor. So it's nice and clear. So everything has come up more or less roses. Everything's been clear. This ran, so I'm not thinking it's all that bad. This side of the carburetor is the side toward the air filter, and I normally go through and just make sure all the ports are clear, all the channels are clear, and you can tell when you spray in there and you see stuff drip out somewhere else on the carburetor. So that side is all clear. I don't know if you could see down there, there's a little hole. I like to make sure that I blast through that. And when I come back in through the bottom, I believe it's this one. Yeah, I think you guys could see that, right? That it's clean. This one's, I think that's the main. You guys, I think you can see that's clear. And that's clear. And last but not least, this is where the fuel needle goes. That's all clear. So at this point, the body of the carb, I've, by blasting the solvent through it, you can see each and every piece of it is clear. I don't know how well these can you see those little holes on here? See that line of holes, and then a few there, then a line of holes. When you actually look up into the bright sky, don't recommend looking into the sun with this, but you can actually see light through those holes or not. And as you look through the barrel of this, once again at the bright sky, not right at the sun, you should actually see a hole through that. And the same, this one's for the idle circuit. Same thing, you see the holes on the sides, and you see the holes here. I normally like to take stranded wire and just feed through those holes to make sure they're all nice and clean. Right, this is a heavier gauge stranded wire. That's what I use. The nice thing about using copper is it's actually softer than these pieces, so you don't really have to worry about damaging them too much. The float is really nice and clean, so I'm not going to fool with that at all. It's not sticky. It's really nice and clean. So I'm going to leave well enough alone. This is the needle that turns the gas on and off. I normally give these, with my fingernail, I normally give these a quick scrape to see if I feel anything, and they really feel pretty good. The black rubber tip there actually looks pretty good. I normally just very gently use my fingers to clean it up, and then I'll look it over to make sure I didn't put any particles there, or from picking it up and down off the metal here, leave any particles behind. And I basically put it back together again in reverse of taking it apart. That's how easy I find to do carbs. This, once again though, this carb started off really pretty clean. I've done some soaking over the years. I've had mixed luck with that. I don't know. I typically use brake cleaner or carb cleaner and just blast through all the passages, and normally they come out okay. There's quite a bit of pressure when you blast through with this, so I find it typically cleans them up. So this is my technique. This is how I rebuild the carb. So anyway, I'm going to go through the wire, go through the trouble of running wire through all those individual holes. I don't think you guys need to watch me do each and every one of those to figure out how it's going on, what I need to do with that. This, you really can't adjust the float, nor would I even attempt to, because this carb was not flooding, it wasn't doing anything bad, it just didn't idle very well. So I'm thinking by just cleaning up some of these, it would help. Some of these holes, I don't know if you could see, some of these are clear, some of them are not quite. Same with the, I call this the higher speed. So I think just by blasting the passages out and cleaning these up, everything should be good for me. Don't forget, when you put the needle valve back in, tighten it just to the point where it's snug, and then back out 1.5 to 2 turns, and that should give you a pretty good place to start. Anyhow, I hope you folks all enjoyed this. Any comments, suggestions, I'm open to. Please remember to keep your feet down, keep your heads up, and get out and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.